Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ryan the Mighty Quinn here, the cornerman underscore MMA UFC Fight Announcement. We have two top 15 ranked middleweights with Chris Curtis versus Kelvin Gastelum squaring off at UFC 287. Great fight. Key to this one is who's going to land power and who is going to land it early. You got to watch out for that. Round one's going to decide the fight. So we have Chris ranked 14th coming off of that win against Joaquin Buckley. To me, Chris has some of the best boxing in mixed martial arts. And then Kelvin was supposed to fight. Nazardine got pushed off in December due to his injury. And here we are. So now, interesting about this fight is they're both southpaws. It's going to be interesting to see how Chris boxes against another southpaw and if Kelvin cuts him off a little differently. Strengths for both. Stand up, I'm going Chris. Like I said prior, Chris is some of the best boxing I've seen in mixed martial arts. He just has a way to land those power shots. He's great. I love watching Chris. Wrestling, got to go to the wrestling pedigree with Kelvin. He had great high school, junior college wrestling, mixed martial arts, so it's there. Ground, I'm going to Kelvin as well. I just feel he has that power ground game where he could really lay on top of Chris and pound some damage out. So fight starts standing. Good for Chris. So if I'm Chris, I got to start a little bit earlier than we've seen past. Chris is notoriously a late starter, almost like he takes round one off, whether it's 1 or a 5-round fight. I've seen him fight both. And he kind of gets away with it because he's so devastating with his power. However, it's been used against him in the past. If you look in his PFL fight with Magomedov, he kind of stole round one from him. He was not afraid to trade with Chris in the first round because he knew Chris was going to slow a little start. Then he went to the wrestling in rounds 2 and 3. I kind of think that Chris needs to be a little bit more aggressive. Don't let that snowball effect go with Kelvin because Kelvin is so good with that. And he's going to have to establish that outer foot. And he's going to have to start kind of eat Kelvin's body up with his punches. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how Chris's jab is. You know, like I talked about his hooks, his power punches. Against another southpaw, he's going to have to jab a little bit. So I would want to establish, I'm not necessarily saying establish that jab, but just establish that boxing. Wear on the big guy coming in at you probably, and just score with that power punches. You know, make him beat me with my boxing. That's how I'm doing that if I'm Chris, which is basically Chris's game anyway. Now, if I'm Kelvin, Kelvin does a great job of standing in the center, not giving up ground. He might make Chris try to dance around a little bit. Maybe he's going to try to make Chris, he's going to have to feint, get him out of that stance a little bit. He's going to have to throw some hands himself. Like I said, whoever wins this first round, it's going to decide because Chris starts kind of slow. Kelvin actually starts kind of slow too, but he's just a little bit more calculative than a slow starter. There is a difference. He's looking to see what he could do as opposed to just taking a round off. If I'm Kelvin, I really want to establish that takedown. I really want to get that round one. I want to get Chris on the ground. I want to get him out of his comfort zone early. That might give Kelvin the opportunity to take a round off later, but I really wouldn't want to do that against Chris. He's pretty dangerous. So I would just stick to my wrestling with Kelvin, establish that center, and then if I can get in, get those body locks, get that clinch game working so I can get the takedown, get Chris to the ground. Chris doesn't get finished very easy, though. So I would still stick to the calculative game, especially on the ground if I'm Kelvin. I would clinch, get him to the ground, set up home in half guard. Make Chris try to fight at a half guard, drop elbows, power hammer strikes, stuff like that. So now, if I'm Chris, if I can't establish my boxing, can't establish my power, I got to get that jab going. You'll see Chris kind of come in like this a little bit. I think that's actually a pretty good cover stance against somebody like Kelvin. He's not really going to launch big head kicks at you. And I would try to do those stab jabs to the body if it's not working. Just set up the power shots a little differently than rolling with the head and rolling with the exchanges and just winning exchanges. That's the other thing that Chris does so well. I would try to jab to open Kelvin up a little bit more. Jab, really pepper that face to set up my power punches. So he's gonna still stick to boxing. He's just gonna set up his power punches a little bit differently if he's losing this fight. Go from rolling, getting the exchanges going, to jabbing, to forcing Kelvin to open up. Don't get involved with the striking game. Now, if I'm Kelvin and I'm losing this fight, it's because I lost round one. He's going to have to really, instead of just trying to stay in his center, he's going to have to try to shoot underneath Chris's power or clinch underneath Chris's power. And he's going to have to just, again, go to that wrestling or dirty boxing. It might be the case where he's having a hard time getting Chris to the ground. So just keep it on the feet. Get him against the fence. Make it boring. I think that's Kelvin's key to victory there, plan B. So either way, it's going to be a great fight. Really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to the seats for both of them. Kelvin's had a tough paper route. He's always fighting in the top 10, fighting in the top 5. Chris has been really surprising since he's come into the UFC. He's fought top 20 guys, and he's just really held his own. He's beaten a bunch. He's lost to 1 or 2, but he's really doing well. Really looking forward to this fight. Always love watching those two fight. Let me know what you guys think. We got more coming up. Talk to you later. Bye.